I'm honored and humbled to be able to speak today. I want to thank Dean Anderson and others who have worked so hard to make this dream of the Covey Leadership Center become a reality. In preparation for this talk today, I reviewed my personal journals, who I have to give credit also to John Covey and his wife Jane, who taught me to keep personal journals when I was a missionary under his guidance. But I reviewed my personal journals. I looked at YouTube talks, Stephen's comments, and others, and I reflected upon his influence upon my life and millions of others. Thus, preparing for today, I've been again inspired, and it's reignited my desire to be a better person. I first met Stephen on July 27, 1978. I was a young general manager of 26 years of age. I asked Stephen to travel to our family business in Hiram and instruct the family and executives about leadership. Stephen introduced us to principle-based leadership. This included how to build trust, the concept of win-win, the communication skill of seeking first to understand and then be understood, never talking behind someone's back, and cultivating the 4 dimensions of the human personality and experiencing a daily private victory, among other things. And I have to tell you a little bit about this daily private victory thing. So I got up this morning at 6:30. I sat in my favorite chair and I began to have this private victory about what would happen today and what this audience would look like. And I can tell you it works because you're a whole lot better looking now than when you were at 6:30 this morning. These principles resonated with our family and team, and the concepts became a binding language that kept us focused towards achieving our goals. A couple years later, I was asked to run the entire family group of businesses. It was a big decision, and I had some serious concerns about my ability to succeed with so many family members involved, declining market shares, as well as being undercapitalized. I asked Stephen for advice, and he strongly suggested that I obtain a management contract with my family. So I drove down to Provo, we met, and we sat down and we drafted the big ask. This is about 1979. $60,000 annual salary. We wrote it down. I can remember Stephen talking about this. 10% of the profits, and a fixed price option to buy 13% of the business. I wasn't even sure what an option was. It was a big ask from my point of view. Stephen's response was, "Be bold." With trepidation, I presented it to my uncle. He looked it over and asked for a couple days to respond. It seemed like 2 years. And then a few days later, he called me into his office and said, "I can accept your proposal with one change. 10% of the profits after the first $1 million. Well, we hadn't made $1 million since I'd been there. But being young and believing that we would make millions a year, I smiled and I shook his hand. The contract was memorialized, and we went on to build a great business with great people using Covey's leadership principles. Stephen continued as a consultant to the family and business for a few years, and then as a mentor and friend and advisor throughout my professional career as CEO of Armour Food Company in Nebraska and National Beef Company in Kansas City. The 7 habits became the basic framework of my leadership style, and that of our management teams. I'd like to diverge just for a moment and share a little bit about a man by the name of Don Miguel Ruiz. I've read a number of books that he wrote. Ruiz is a Toltec spiritual teacher, a medical doctor, and a successful author. To help illustrate the power of Stephen's words, I would like to share and paraphrase a few of Ruiz's teachings. Listen very carefully to this because I've had to read the book 2 or 3 times to try to relate to it closely. But regardless of what language you speak, your intent manifests through your word. What you dream, what you feel, and what you really are will all be manifested through your word. The word is a force. It's real. It is the power you have to express and communicate, to think, and thereby create the events in your life and influence the lives of many others. Your word is the most powerful tool you have as a human. And in a mystical way, it's like magic. But like a sword with 2 edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream, or your word can destroy everything around you, including yourself. One edge is the misuse of the word, which creates a living hell. I'm no good. I'll never be anything. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. The other edge is the impeccability of the word, which will only create beauty, love, and heaven on earth. Depending on how it is used, our words can set us free, or it can enslave us even more than we know and further distort our paradigm. All the magic you possess is based on your word. Your word is pure magic. The misuse of your word is black magic. The words we speak are so powerful it can change a life or destroy the lives of millions of people. Some years ago, a man in Germany, by the use of the word, manipulated a whole country of the most intelligent people. He led them into a world war with just the power of his word. He convinced others to commit the most atrocious acts of violence. He activated people's fear with the word, and like a big explosion, millions of lives were taken and global suffering occurred. Think of every human as a magician. We can either cast a spell on someone with our word, or we can release someone from a spell. We cast spells all the time with our opinions through words. That is the power of the word. During our domestication, our parents and siblings gave their opinions about us without even thinking. We believed those opinions and we lived in fear over those opinions, like not being good enough at swimming or sports or writing or speaking. Someone gives you an opinion and says, look, this girl is ugly. The girl listens, believes she is ugly, grows up with the idea that she is ugly. Doesn't matter that she's beautiful or how beautiful she is. She will believe she is ugly. That is the spell she is under. By hooking our attention, the word can enter our mind and change a person for better or worse. That is the power of the word. Stephen's impact on all of us and millions of others is the result of the impeccability of his word. Impeccability means without sin, or never using words that go against yourself or others. I don't mean that Stephen was perfect. He wasn't. But his words reflected a core belief, a set of time-tested principles, and he walked the talk. He knew who he was, and his word and life reflected the core principle understanding that human life is beautiful, purposeful, and by its very nature, godlike. He also recognized that we see the world as we are, not as it really is. With humility and the adaptation of time-tested principles he believed and taught, we can see ourselves more correctly. He often referred to this as a more accurate paradigm. I remember when Stephen came to hire him and he used the word paradigm. I didn't even know what the word paradigm was, but I knew it very well after spending a little time with him. Unlike many who spread their black magic relentlessly and carelessly, Stephen sequenced his words into a cohesive framework that hooked the attention of others and enabled them to deeply identify with correct principles. His ability to communicate with the power of his word is why we are here today. That influence, or let's say white magic, continues to influence and touch the lives of those who hear or read his words now. I'd like to share a few examples I have witnessed just the past few years of the power of Stephen's word. Sean was so good that you brought up the story of the leader in me, and I'm glad that you talked a little bit about the history of the leader in me. As Sean mentioned, this program is promoted and developed basically by Stephen Covey today. And the program reaches, imagine this, K through 12 students, teaching them the 7 habits, fully integrates into the curriculum. There are 4,000 schools. Do you know that that's nearly 2 million children a day that hear the words of Stephen Covey? 2 million. Think about the impact of this. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit a middle school in Brooklyn, New York, the Dewey Middle School. Dewey was in its 2nd year of the 7 Habits Leader in Me curriculum. On this particular day, I, along with a small group, were met by students as we entered the school. It's an old school, must be 100 years old, surrounded by a high barbed wire fence. I was immediately impressed with the attitude and character of our student guides. There were no teachers or administrators with us, only student leaders. As we walked down the hallways, I noticed many signs and posters reflecting messages about the 7 habits, and numerous quotes from inspired leaders, including Stephen's. We soon entered a 5th grade class full of energetic students. The teacher asked us if we had any questions and motioned that the students would be happy to answer them. I stepped forward and asked any of the 30-some students in the class their favorite habit of the 7 habits. Immediately, all the hands went up. They're trying to get my attention. And I called on one young girl who shared her favorite habit, which was begin with the end in mind. Thinking, okay, she's got that one memorized. I dug a little deeper and asked her to share with us an example of how beginning with the end in mind was influence her life. Without hesitation, she responded, I intend to be a nurse when I'm 20. I'm preparing today by studying and getting good grades. I called on a young man whose hand was waving, and I asked, what is your favorite habit? He responded, first things first, with power and conviction. Please share with me an example of how you put the first things first. Well, when I get home from school each day, I get my homework done before I go outside and play or meet my friends. Wow, I thought, this is impressive. A few minutes later, walking down the hallway to a different class room, I asked one of our student guides if bullying was a problem in their school. Oh, she said, it used to be, but not anymore. What has changed, I asked. We seek first to understand and then be understood. And we work out win-win solutions so everybody wins. Later that afternoon, we met with a small group of teacher advisors. One lovely lady looked at me in the eyes and said, "Mr. Miller, I have taught school here," I can still see this, "for 29 years. And I can tell you I have seen more progress in this school in the past 2 years than I have seen in 27 years combined. It has been transformational." Another school, a few weeks later, a principal told me she was delaying her retirement because she was experiencing more fulfillment and enjoyment from her job than ever before. She felt what was happening was so important, she needed to make sure it was well rooted before she retired. I have heard this same message in dozens of schools in the past few years. It's truly transformational, the power of Stephen's word. A number of years ago, my family and I were attending an unveiling of a statue honoring a leader in Salt Lake City. Stephen was also in attendance. As I introduced my son Alex, Stephen asked him what he was doing with his life. Alex responded that he was a student. Without any hesitation, Stephen replied, "I'm a student also." I've often thought throughout the years how true these words are. I've had many lessons, and some I've had to repeat more than once or twice. I realize that we are all students of life, making our way along life's path. Thank goodness for this wonderful man whose words have inspired us to strive to be higher levels of understanding. We may not all be famous like Stephen Covey or Steve Young, but we can all be great by using the power of our words to influence and spread white magic among everyone we come into contact with. The essence of what I'm trying to say here today is that we all have the same power. And if we use that power with impeccability, following the example that Stephen showed us, we can change our own life and touch the lives of many people in a similar way. I would challenge each of us to be proactive, and for the rest of today and beyond, to take a moment before using your magic to answer the question, am I casting white or black magic with my words upon those I come into contact with? Let's be impeccable with our word. It's my belief and hope that this Center for Leadership will be a catalyst for hooking the attention of students and teachers and would-be leaders of men and women through Stephen's words and the words of other great leaders to influence and improve the lives of others. Be bold. Thank you.